Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday evening. It is 9 o'clock. Time for a Tuesday night Blether. But first, as always, a little music. Enjoy.
We are all the heirs to Scotland, as a nation proudly stand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let a flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. To the world we bid a welcome in 1,000 different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
Good evening, folks. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all cozy and comfy. October. I'm doing my best to recover. Again, I would like to repeat many thanks for all your prayers and good wishes and kind thoughts. I really do appreciate all of that. I really do. So, you know, how long I'm going to last tonight, I have no idea. I'll just take that as it comes. So, What I have found so far, and it looks as though this may be the way it's going to be from here on in, is that I'm only able to do one thing at a time. And by that, what I mean is like today, I have done nothing in preparation because I knew that I'd be doing the live stream. For example, on Friday night after the movie review, I said to my son on the Saturday morning that what we would do is we'd start off early, go and do some shopping, come back home, grab a bite of lunch, and I would then head up to see Laura. Well, that didn't happen. That was the lesson there. When we got back home, I was completely washed out. And I could move. So we had a bit of lunch, and after the lunch, I fell asleep and didn't wake until 5:30. So you can see that anything that I'm doing, regardless of how uh, little physical action is taking place, uh, is taking it out of me. And that's what I mean. I'm learning the hard way that I can only do one thing every day. So, knowing that I was going to do this live stream, I didn't even try and do anything other than, wash my face and brush my teeth. And that was about it. Uh, Otherwise, I'd be completely washed out. As I say, at the moment, that looks as though the way my life is panning out. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I might get stronger. Who knows? Uh, and of course, there's no one I can ask for advice. Nobody I know knows anything about what my condition is or how it might affect me. So I've got no secondary backup advice to go on. So everything is just speculation on my part and learning as I'm going along. Uh, well, that's it, TikTok. I'm not getting myself stressed. I mean, for example, I have already decided that this week there will be no live stream on Thursday. I'm not even going to consider it at all. I'll try for a Friday one, but certainly not 3. And we'll see how that goes. The 2. I don't want to drop it altogether, but at the same time, I've got to try and get myself well and as well as I can possibly get, considering. So that's where we are, as far as I'm personally concerned. And I'm sure you'll all understand if I. And the way this works, by the way, just so you all know that I'm not being dramatic, but what happens is when I run out of energy, it's just bang, I've run out of energy. I just kind of, oh gosh, you know. And if I do that online, then I'll just be closing down the live stream. Because that's what I do in life, when I'm just at home here. If I suddenly find that I've run out of energy, then I just get myself into bed as quickly as I can and fall asleep uh, and allow my body to recover. And that's the way it works at the moment. So it may happen. I hope not. Be a bit dramatic if it does. But the other thing I wanted to do was, there's Julia. Yeah, I'm doing all right, Julia. Thanks very much. Uh, I wanted to get back to the subject that was touched on Friday evening, and that was art. Uh, that's why the stream is. I gave it a title, which is something I haven't done for a long time. Art for art's sake. Because what I was saying about art in that film, hot water bottle, Earl of Stair. I have hot water bottles, but I've got even better than that. My sister bought me an electric blanket. Ah, glorious. But I'm not using it, oddly enough. Not at the moment anyway, but I have in the colder weather. Oh, there's Scott's Armour. It's nice to have you here. You like chocolate? Says Treble M. Do you like chocolate? I've got bars and bars and bars of chocolate that are bought for me by my son, by Alison, by the girls. Well, when not so much Laura anymore, but when Lorraine comes and visits, they always bring chocolate bars. I used to be able to devour chocolate bars like no one's business, but less so since this condition hit me. So as I say, I wanted to talk about art and the importance of it. I wonder if well, thanks very much, Treble M. But honestly, I just don't have the same appetite for it anymore. I'm not being ungrateful, but I just don't. I can't. I just don't eat it as greedily as I once did. I don't even look for it as I once did. I don't know if Scott's Armour would come on. Would you come on, Scott's Armour? Speak for a short while. Talk about art. Art for art's sake. Because I don't want to have I don't want to have given the wrong impression on Friday night. Now, the impression that I wanted to put over was, in that the case of that film, was, in my view, it is not art. But it was part of a bigger so-called movement. But the bigger movement that it was part of was completely degenerate and was a reflection of what was happening in Berlin during the 1920s. There was two Berlins in the 1920s. Oh, that's great. I'll get my earlugs out. There was Berlin with the moneyed people, and then there was the Berlin of the ordinary people. And the Berlin of the money people were the people, by and large, they were the people who not only controlled the fine arts, but they controlled the theatres and the burgeoning film production companies. Okay, doke, my friend. I'll put the link into the stream, and you can come on from there. It'd be nice to speak to you again. We haven't spoken for a while. And that was a part that I didn't get over as well as I wanted to. That this was all part of a bigger social movement. So you had the people who controlled the art galleries, the photographic galleries, the photographic shops, the theatres, and the theatre groups. And on top of that, everywhere was beginning to experiment with making films, including in Germany. And the same people were taking control of that as well in Germany in the 1920s. Now that's something that is important. It's always underplayed. There he is. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening.
That's a good sound check.
Thank you very much. I think It's just good to see you back on screen, to be honest with you, John. It's honestly, it's a delight. I can't emphasise that enough, friend. It's good to see you back doing what you're doing, and the community obviously gathering round to wish you well.
Yeah, everyone's been very supportive. It's really amazing. It really is. Means a lot, of course. Always does. So I'm talking about the 1920s in Berlin. I'm talking about the art world, who controlled it, and what impact it had and made. And what are the other aspects of this that particularly bothers me as a photographer is the fact that all over Europe there were thousands upon thousands of individual photographers starting up their own little shops and businesses, because in those days we were still dealing with black and white processing, which people could handle in a small environment, unlike colour. So all of that was going on, and all of that stuff fed in to what is generally lumped in one word called pornography. And a lot of the pornography was to be found in these small, individually owned photographic studios where German men, women, and children were paid to pose in all sorts of different ways. So that when you see those documentaries of the fires and the burning, it is a lie that's being spun. It is not books. The implication has always been given that these crazy, mad Nazis were plundering libraries and just burning any old books because they were against education or against knowledge. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. And what I'm telling you is that these individual shops, the photographic shops, what would happen there is if you were a person who wanted access to visual pornography, you would go into one of these shops and you could buy packets of still photographs, and they would be various contents. It wouldn't all just be nude photographs of women or nude photographs of men or men and women. It would be an assortment. And you could ask specifically for, say, children. You wanted photographs of children. That is never mentioned. And that's part of what you're watching when you see those fires and the burning. It isn't just books. It's much, much more than that. It's also, on top of that, it's scripts for theatre, scripts or proposed scripts for theatre, proposed scripts for films, poetry recitals, dealing with degeneracy, etc., etc., recordings of voice recordings. There would also be film recordings that you could buy, 8mm, 16mm. And I didn't have the opportunity to fill all that out when I was talking on Friday night, and I wanted to do that. And I don't know how much my good friend Scott's Armour can add to that. I don't know if you can, Scott's, can you? You know very much about it yourself.
Um, well, to be honest, you've covered basically absolutely everything. But yeah, the narrative has been for the longest time, that a country that was allowed to be socially through the means of its arts and literature and through its spiritual erosion, these people just took up arms and started banning and burning books of science and maths is a ludicrous take because when you get down to the nitty gritty, it was books of absolute filth and degeneracy. A lot of people overlook the fact that that Berlin was the sadist capital of the Western world because of the amount of things that was going on.
Yeah,
Children being prostituted off in the streets to these um, middle class and rich aristocrats, basically just to try and put bread on the table. This is how depraved Germany had become,
yes.
unfortunately, throughout a large period of time under several administrations, nonetheless, all
Yeah, yeah.
done by the very system that they talk about,
Yes.
democratic.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, when we actually look at the things that happened there, it goes back to that old saying, history repeats itself, because now, in the year 2023, we have the same perverts going into the same schools, promoting the same books. It's just tailored in a different package under the term of inclusive and intolerance and liberal friendly labels to entice the most impressionable people who, by large part, have good virtues in the sense of wanting to not hate people, but not understanding that something that comes at you in the form of a campaign, a billboard, for etc. It's the narrative and the agenda that follows behind that. And throughout history, and even in today's climate, if you point out the fallacies and the wrongdoings, in particular, of certain groups and certain individuals, you will always be met with a head on campaign to drown you out and put a censorship on you, whether that's deplatform, whether that's through social media use to encourage people to mock and ridicule. But take heed, folks, that that the folks who have got the strength to stand up, whether it's people that you see online, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Telegram, going out and challenging the narratives, these people are the modern day crusaders, as John quite frankly goes on and points out. They're the ones that's taking task and meeting it face on and calling out this evil because it's the same enemy. There's nothing new under the sun. And these books, more importantly, do more damage to the arts and to the spirituality of a nation because if you can manipulate and coerce an art which reflects the people of each sovereign nation, it's like their identity, their history, their culture being portrayed through the means of arts and through the very essence of their spiritual faith. The minute that becomes eroded, people become broken. And that is why there was such an emphasis to cover that up, because if people had come to the terms of the true reality of why these books were burned and the damage that had been done before these books were even burned, a different narrative, a different mindset, a different tolerance, and a different outlook on that whole subject completely.
Absolutely. And on top of all of that, folks, the other aspect that is not mentioned anywhere enough is that the First World War officially ended in 1918, and the Royal Navy, much to our great shame, continued to blockade food arriving into Germany up until at least 1921. And during that time, there was millions upon millions of German men, women, children, starving on the streets. Now you have to remember, this is a place that doesn't have a welfare system like we have today. This is a place that you're more or less on your own unless the church comes in and helps. And the only people who were capable of helping in those days were either, and Germany was split roughly this way, that the Roman Catholics were about roughly half, and the other half of Germany was made up of various denominations of Protestant churches. And it was only through church charities that people got any kind of relief. But if you look carefully at the documentaries, you'll see the champagne flowing as though it's going out of fashion. But that's only for a certain class of people. And I'm not suggesting for one moment that that class of people all belonged to a particular group or subgroup, because they didn't. And we should never allow ourselves to be suckered into that idea either. The point I'm making is that the arts were attacked. The churches hadn't yet been attacked, but the arts had been attacked. They sort of, this Jewish artistic movement, they sort of tried to emulate the French Impressionists and failed badly. And so they went on in this, in my view, this grotesque presentation of painting. And this is what I was coming on to is, and I'm confident that Scott's Armour is definitely going to agree with me here. In order for an object to be considered artistic, it needs to have two qualities, at least two. It has to have truth, and it has to have beauty. And when we go back to that particular film has neither beauty nor does it have truth. And the general world beyond that film, in the world of painting, in the world of photography, was exactly the same. It neither had beauty nor did it have truth. And if you don't have that, what you have is ugliness. Would you agree?
Well, here's the thing, and it's that word ugliness. You've kind of put that into a nutshell by large part, because if you can see the transition of European art from the famous statues that we see in ancient Greece, for example, the fantastic chapels that were built, and then you look at the works of, just to name a few people over the years, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Monet, Van Gogh, Picasso. We could be
Yeah.
sitting here all day. European people influenced by their own ethnic European culture, their ideals, their spiritual beliefs into these fantastic pieces. Now, the reason why these arts stand out the test of time is purely because of that reason. But the capitulating thing here is very sadly, that gets completely overlooked, is nowadays we've got this thing called modern art, and there was a museum somewhere. I think me and DJ and that spoke about it a while ago, of a banana. I think it was in Korea or something like that. There's like basically a banana that has been put up as a piece of art. Someone's went ate that banana, and now they've just put up a brand new banana skin. The point being that I'm making here is from grand masterpieces to such grotesque is only words you can use it. Things that are being passed off as art is the absolute symptom of everything that has went wrong. And the people who are manipulating and took control of the arts world is the same people that has took control of the social political sphere in terms of making everything equally dull and grey. If
Yes.
nothing stands out as wholly unique, whether it be Caucasian, whether it be Native Indian, whether it be Aboriginal folks, you've got to remember each culture and ethnicity ties in with that individual aspect. If you take that away from that, nothing stands the test of time. And this is why, by large part, very sadly to say, the works and the innovation that our ancestors did to put up these spectacular buildings, to put forward these spectacular pieces, is going to be hard to be replicated because of this means. Because when it comes down to being truly expressive, one decides what expression truly is, and expression doesn't equate degeneracy, and
No.
should it never be.
Exactly. And that's the point. The point is, back in the 1920s when that film was made, just like today, as Scott's Armour is saying, the people who control the artwork and control the arts are essentially the same folk today as it was back then. And as what I was saying on Friday, I'll repeat myself. What they did was they attempted to intellectualize the film so that people like you and I would be afraid to criticize it for fear of being called stupid and uneducated. Right? But that's really not the case. The case is it's ugly. It has no beauty and it has no truth, as most of the paintings and the photography that was produced at the time was the same. So once you get control of the art world, you can promote anything. And once you can promote anything, you will convince people who don't know anything about art and are afraid to express themselves. They may have zillions of pounds in the bank and can afford to pay silly money for it all. And that's generally what happens. But they're buying a product that has no intrinsic value and it has no truth and it has no beauty attached to it. They're buying it because they have been convinced that this is somehow fantastic modern art and should be prized and praised. And it's all a giant con. This is what gets me. It always has bothered me about art, especially when I'm involved in it myself. So I'll write a song, say, and I'll present it to friends and I'll say, this is a new song I've written. Do you like it? And I know right away that they're all going to be a bit hesitant to say something. And people are like that. They don't want to hurt your feelings. so they hesitate. But generally, people will say, yeah, I kind of like it. I'll need to hear it a few times. And then they hear it a few times and they come round and they kind of like it. Or they don't. And my point has always been whether it's music, poetry, visual arts, movies, I don't care. You sit, if you're presented with this piece of art and you don't like it, you should have the self confidence to say, I don't like it. You don't, there is no requirement on you to explain why you don't like it. You don't have to write a 5,000 word essay explaining why you think this is a piece of crap. That's not even required. All it's required is I, as an individual, presented with this piece, like it or I don't like it. And if we had more of that honesty, a lot of what happened back in the 1920s and is happening yet again, as Scott Sarmer rightly says, and has been going on since after the Second World War, it started again. A lot of this stuff wouldn't be given house room. Why would you pay a fortune for a pile of red bricks simply because it says out switch on it? It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Or unmade bed. Are you joking? This is an insult. This is what they're doing. They're insulting you now. And people should walk away from this. They should have the courage and confidence to say, that's nonsense. That's not art. It's crap. Now, some people will do that, but not enough. And if enough people did it, that power that comes with it, excuse me, the power that comes with that would dissipate because people would not accept it. They would say, no, I don't agree. I think you're talking nonsense. And for the most part, they do. These so-called artistic intellectuals. That's my view on it, and it always has been my view on it. I'm a photographer. I produce photographs. I think they're artistic. Some are better than others. And people either like them or they don't like them. But I don't ask people to justify or explain in any intellectual way why they respond in the way they do. I don't think it's necessary. Art should be something you respond to emotionally. That's my feeling on the art thing. But I think there's a lot of power that comes through control of the art world, which is usually missed. What do you think, Scott's Armour? Or am I talking nonsense here?
Well, to be fair, John, you said an awful lot, but with that, I can't disagree with any of it, and I'm not saying that as general appeasement because I think you and I, although we may slightly differ from various things, we do see eye to eye and stand next to each other on many fronts, and I think the word control, if we use that as a general example,
Yeah.
you also get that through the media, controlled narratives, so people kind of get subconsciously conditioned into accepting things before they do happen, because by that point, it's kind of it doesn't feel as strange or off when it happens because there's been subtle touches through, newspapers or Facebook advertisements and so on and so forth. And when you get that in academia as well. For example, if you're going to university, and we'll just take a general subject, for example, like philosophy, there is generally a set um, itinerary for the year. So they'll turn and say there's 6 gentlemen with various books, and you have to go and use these books throughout the year to write essays and engaging topical conversations. However, if you don't agree with any of those narratives, like you don't agree with any of those narratives in the media, and you speak out about it, then you've got the whole conversation of, well, the person of authority and these people that cite these sources because they come under quote unquote peer reviewed means that you better get back in line or else you can get put on the naughty step. And this is kind of the first point of submission that they control you with, in terms of whether it be the arts, whether it be music, whether it be anything in anyday life. Because let's be honest, folks, that control is all over every aspect of what you can and cannot do. Now, I'm not saying certain things are always shady by nature. Sure, there's certain things in place, like, you can't go out and rob a shop. Well, there's a law there to prevent that, and rightly so. But in terms of being able to allow people to express themselves, or to converse, or to have freedom of thought, or just to create from the soul, if there's barriers put up, then it's not pure by intention, it's moulded by design. And this is therein lies in the problem, because now we've seen that with the education world, like the art world, with certain insidious narratives and dirty fingerprints throughout these two institutions, now we have people who, in my honest opinion, come out of school, don't know what art is, couldn't paint a picture of Thomas the Tank Engine. You've got people that come out of school with all these sociology degrees, have no clue about the real world, and they're just lost, a generation lost, which means that there's not going to be any influencers of real quality to teach the youth and the next generation that's coming through. So therefore, it's a knock-on effect with a dumbed down people. And this is the control mechanisms that they have put in place since World War II, since beyond that, using levers of your culture and your arts, the media and the press, the local government, and academia. It's all interlinked, and I always make the reference of it's an onion. You pull a layer back, there's another representation, you pull another one right till you get to the very core. The best thing, I believe, and I've continued to say this, is disengage, be true to yourself, because if you be true to yourself, nothing in this world will mould you into the way that the world wants you to be. Hence what I said earlier, grey and dull.
Absolutely. I can testify to what you're saying, Scots, having been at uni. Uh, First year I took philosophy. It's a mandatory subject, and I didn't mind that. I thought I was uh, quite good at philosophical thinking. But every time there was any examination set, I never passed it. I always failed, and failed miserably, which was gave us a great distress to me. And I couldn't figure out why this was the case. But then fortune smiled upon me, and a young woman, a young Irish girl, arrived in the department in her middle 20s. She wore a leather jacket, the thick, woolly tights that the girls wear, real short skirt, and the big tackety boots. And she was part of the lecturing team. And she called me up to her office one day. I said, John, what the hell is going on with you? why do you keep failing these exams? Don't you understand what's going on? I said, no, not really. No, not really. She says, you keep telling us why these men, these philosophers are wrong, and you're showing us where they're wrong. And we don't want to hear that. What we want is for you to repeat what we are telling you. In other words, we want you to regurgitate what we're giving you. We don't want your opinion, whether your opinion is right or not, which it happened to be. Oh, so finally, the penny dropped, and I never had any more problems. But it makes your point that no, as an undergraduate, you shut your mouth and you take in what they tell you. And I had this problem all across the board because when I went to university, I was 47. I wasn't just a youngster out of school. So they had umpteen problems with me because I didn't take this attitude. So you're absolutely right. And that's an indictment against universities because universities, before I ever went to one, I thought they were a place where you went, where you expressed your ideas, and where you could be challenged on those ideas. And if you had good ideas, there would be people there that would help you formulate those ideas and present them even better. But that's not what's there. It's a regurgitation machine. And if you
100%, John. It's like when you probably think about it, the first place cancel culture probably came into by large part would have been the universities and the schools, because this is where by large part the condition actually happens. Now, I don't know if you've seen it recently. There was some type of artistic show, and there's a picture of this African lady, which can only be described as like a spear hole going through these white dollies, and this is being passed off as a bold statement and stunning, and it's although it's very graphic, but they're playing down that part. They're putting it off there as a powerful embodiment of art, and I sat and thought to myself, this literally took pardon my language here, John, a communist nutcase all of 2 seconds to kind of a picture and put into place. But just for the folks that haven't seen it, if you don't have the ability to do it currently on stream, as soon as this stream ends, go and look at this, right? The Trevi Fountain, right? It's a fountain in Italy. It's a very famous one.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to look at this, right? And don't look at it and go, it's a fountain. Look around the fountain, right? The vision of someone designing that, the articulation, the amount of detail that had went into that before any stone was cut to size to put that together, the amount of original imagination from the soul that put that pencil to the paper to now turn into an absolute stunning masterpiece. That's art, folk. That is art in its original format. Not some mop pole going through a collection of baby born dolls that you could get out of Toys R Us for £2. And this is the levels of erosion and decadency which has happened within this whole entire field, like many others.
Yeah, this is the point I'm making. That I'm hoping to show, and I'm sure that everyone here tonight can see it quite clearly. But what I was talking about on Friday about that movie and where it came from and who was responsible, etc., is exactly the same as it is Today, nothing has changed. Perhaps different imagery, perhaps different presentations, because we have materials that we didn't have back there in the 1920s and 30s. But the actual contents are exactly the same. Because when it comes to human beings, uh, there is a limitation on how you can present a human being. Believe it or not, folks, you, I've seen plenty of photographs of naked women, and I've seen plenty of really ugly photographs, something that you could not ever call art. Not because the women themselves are ugly or not shapely. No, because there is no attempt to draw from the subject. There is no attempt to draw humanity from the subject to show some kind of uh, association with the subject, and, and no attempt to show some humanity and truth from that subject. So what you end up with is something that is just ugly. At the same time, you can have the other side of it, where you can get uh, naked photographs of men and women, where it can be beautiful because the relationship between the artist, i.e., the photographer in this case, and the subject is completely different. And therein lies the answer to the question. It's the relationship between the subject and I'll call it the photographer, and the photographer. If you have a relationship there, a good human relationship, you will get beauty and you will get truth, regardless of almost, not completely, but almost regardless of how you present the image in your final shot. But if you don't have that relationship between subject and object, then you're going to end up with grotesque imagery, which is what you end up with. And that is what was being presented back in the 20s, and that is what is presented today in the so-called modern world. It's just done in a different way. So nothing has changed. And people need to be aware of that and be wise to it and not fall for it. And don't get caught up in it. Don't even waste your time trying to knock it down. Just ignore it. Because in this modern age, we are absolutely saturated with imagery of one kind or another. If it's not billboards, movies, magazines, etc., the internet, etc., etc. So it's even worse now than it was back in the 1920s, because there are so many different ways now to present imagery, good or bad. And people need to, I think, learn self control. And when they see something that they consider to be degenerate, just to switch off or change, go somewhere else, don't look, don't encourage, don't criticize, just leave it alone. And if we did that more and more, this would begin to shrink. But so long as you constantly feed it with criticisms, uh, it'll exist and it'll grow. That's my thinking on it.
I'd agree with that to a certain degree. I
Okay.
believe that there is certain things. For example, I'll just use the common one that's been taking the world by storms. The drag queens and the school children. Now,
Oh,
by
Jesus.
large part, a lot of folk, with because you got to remember that this is what they're saying is artistic and it comes through expression. Grown men dressing up in their mother's clothes, I don't believe that's art. But the point that I'm making, is if you allow these things to go unchallenged, certain things to go unchallenged, then people then take that on that it's widely accepted, and when there's a barrier there that could kind of corrupt children from the offset without a critical conversation, should we say, and pointing out that there's certain things that shouldn't be seen for such young eyes that they aren't able to comprehend. I think that there's certain lines there, but by a large part, yeah, I could agree with that. Um, but it's at the same time, it's trying to put on an approach where people don't overdo it. And the best one that I can use for that example, although it's not arts, but it is a bit of a pain in the arse, is just it's these just stop oil weirdos. There's about 12 people just taking over a road, and folk are just trying to mind their business, getting to work, and then you see on an odd occasion people getting out and they're punching lumps out of them now.
Yeah.
I perfectly understand that. Let's be absolutely clear here, folks. There's been times where it's been justified because of the nature of the people that's trying to get to certain places within these
Yeah.
traffic jams. But these decent folk who aren't doing anything wrong, who are being held up by these weirdos, end up getting the coppers at their house or at their workplace and booking them and taking them through court because of these assaults. So it's know your audience, and I guess where the circumstance is fitting of the situation would probably be the best advice that I would give on that one.
Yeah. Well, I will uh, correct myself and agree with you that children should not be exposed to men dressed up as women in these nursery places. That is completely unacceptable. Should be laws against it, and they should be uh, charged, taken to court, and if I had my own way, they would do time automatically uh, because it's just unacceptable on every single level. So, apologies to anyone who got the idea that I was saying that we should just be completely passive, and that's not what I meant. When it comes to stuff online, we can afford to be passive because there's far too much of it. But obviously, in the real world, where these people turn up in libraries, public libraries, and such, that has to be completely resisted and stopped without a doubt, without any question. And if it ever try to bring it here, I would be one of the first on the picket lines. You can bet your boots on that, because it shouldn't be tolerated anywhere. Nor would I tolerate so-called gay pride if I had my way. But that's another slightly different matter.
John,
Uh,
you raise a good point there. I don't know if you'll remember a few weeks ago when I came back from my sabbatical and you invited me on stream and you asked me a question about the great libraries that we have.
yeah,
And remember kind of saying about critical thinking, etc.
yeah,
And you used a word about 5 minutes ago, saturated. And this is the very sad case for libraries by a large part now. you go into libraries over the years and you could go and read up on things, like Dickens or
Yeah.
science, or you get the country's history, pick up the National Geographical books. But nowadays it's nothing like that, And by some degree, are computers relevant in a library? I would say to a certain extent, but and I don't mean this to be belligerent. I really don't, right? But most libraries now, it's kind of been sectioned off into areas where it's like women's only, or if you're fortunate enough within certain areas to have women's only libraries. Don't know why that is. And then you've got a children's bit, which I feel is very fitting and should be encouraged within libraries. But then you've got the computers where it's access, where you've got all the dropouts from school that are up to no good. You've got the people who's in there trying to do job searches, and then you've got all these other activity and local groups that work within that. Then to top that off, you've got these quote unquote performers or degenerates and all these other groups that you mentioned taking over the library. So the very sad case there, that library is a place to learn, to cultivate the mind, to probably go on and be educated, or to kind of get a sense of material to go and express that, whether that be through literature or art, has now become a place where really you're kind of hesitant about going in because it's so saturated with a lot of nonsense in there.
Yeah. No,
The,
you're
the, the,
absolutely.
the libraries, no wonder that they're closing down all over the place, because in the right mind, who would want to go in and see that?
Well, I can speak for Greenock, and this is a fact. And if my big pal Jerry was alive and he was sitting beside me, he would verify this fact. Not a single councillor on in Greenock Council over the years ever used a library. Ever. None of them were ever seen in the library. Not one of them. The library budget has been cut, cut, cut constantly. And you're absolutely right. Instead of a library being a place where you can do casual or light research into a subject that you may be interested in, with the help of librarians who are formally trained to help you do these things. And that should be made easier with the use of computers. So you're right in that sense. That's the way a modern library should be. But it needs to be well funded, and it needs to be encouraged to be used by the public. And I totally agree, and it was always there. Children's libraries always existed. I, believe it or not, when I was a child, a long time ago, I was a member of the junior library. Me and Jerry and a few of my other pals, right? And we went to that library. This is a truth, honestly, almost every day. Every other day, we went to that library because we were ferocious readers. And it got to the point uh, that the librarian, I went one day and I said to the librarian, I can't find a book that I want to read. She said, why is that? I says, because I've read all the books on your shelf. Oh, she says. So she called a colleague over and they took me down the stairs into the senior library, which was massive, and arranged for me to have 4 library tickets when I was well underage for being a member of a senior library. But because I was a well kent face to the junior library, I got these tickets and off I went. And I explored these shelves with the help of librarians. And that's the way people used to use libraries. But then they were undercut. But the idea was, and I don't think you're quite old enough yet, Scots, to remember. You might well be. The idea, how did they sell computers? Well, they sold computers on the back of, you see, if you buy a computer for your youngster, that'll help them with their schoolwork. Oh, so parents who could afford to buy computers would buy them, thinking that computers was going to somehow help their youngsters learn things, which of course they didn't. And computers don't work that way. That's how they began to creep into libraries. And what suffered was the reference libraries. My Greenock Library used to have this huge section of reference books. In fact, when they built the new library, it had a special section that was air conditioned and humidified to make sure that the books were looked after as best they could in the reference library. And that's how it was for a long time. But then, again, the library came under attack. Who by? By councillors. The library, this specially built place in the centre of the town, built by public money, was sold to a housing association. And the library was moved to an empty shop 500 yards away, completely unsuited to be a library. And there it remained for a good number of years. And then it was moved again. And every time the library was moved, it became smaller and more diverse in its usage until we've got the library at the point that you're talking about, where you have all these computers with all sorts of people supposedly doing things. Whether they are or not is a different matter. And the actual book side of things is very, very small compared to what it once was. Likewise with the children's library. It's pitiful. But that I partly blame on councillors, people who had no interest, people who, and I shouldn't say this because I've got no evidence to support it, but I will say it anyway. People who probably didn't do all that well at school and never had any interest in libraries or books. So why would they care? And so the budget just constantly gets cut. And that's where we are today. And that's just here in Inverclyde. And I expect that's the same across Scotland and across Britain. It's just a
You sum
reflection.
that up well, John. You sum that up very well. I think there's a, and I think by large part it falls down to what we were saying earlier on about controlling the influence in shaping of things. But this also touches on to what you've just said. You have people there, years ago, politicians stood up for local community issues, and they would always be at the forefront, they would always be well known, they would always be well respected, and they'd have always been from a working class environment, whether that has been just Glasgow as an example, someone that worked at the shipyards, or someone that worked in the steelworks, somebody of a certain, degree of working with experience.
Yeah.
The local parliament or speak on behalf of it, but badly in any case with some folk in Scotland, you've got these little teenage dropouts that go into university or get some kind of college degree, join a reactionary movement, and then lo and behold, next thing, poof, they're politicians. Mary Black being the best example that I can probably think of off the top of my head. And there's probably some within the Scottish Green ranks, let's be perfectly honest, because you'd have to be wacky and a degenerate to be part of that movement. But nonetheless, it shows you the attitude and the principles of how we actually elected people has transformed into what it is today. And I believe by a large part the control in the narratives of what represents for those communities, because the ideals and the values and the principles have changed over time.
Yeah.
This is now the adoption of what we've got to, which is very, very sad.
It is. It is. And along with all of that, of course, then comes the decline of the appreciation of art. Because at one time, if you wanted to do some kind of show, either a performance or an exhibition of some sort, the public library was always your first stop for advertising it. Now they won't put up anything because they can't get involved. They can't be seen to be supporting this cause or that cause. And that comes from moral cowardice. I've got no time for that. Absolutely no time for it. But that's what you get. And I know this from personal experience. When I was campaigning, they wouldn't put up my little flyer because I couldn't be seen to be supporting somebody. It's just a load of nonsense. But that's where we are. And we allow it to go on. It's us that's to blame. We tolerate it. And we shouldn't. That's my view. We should say no. No. You're a public servant. You get paid by us. If this person wants to advertise himself for election, then he should be allowed to put it up in the notice board. Who are you as a librarian to have the authority to impose some kind of censorship, which is what they're doing? And this is all at local level. So I've got very strong views on all of this, but at the same time, it does erode the general morality, because for most people, that's where they got their morality, from the church pulpit and from reading books. And I don't mean highfalutin books, in philosophy or anything like that. But if you read a standard Western, for example, it generally works out, the good guy wins and the bad guy loses. There's your very simple morality, if you like. This is what I see.
I think, sorry, I had to look at the mic there because I didn't actually realise that I hadn't hit the mute button, so apologies for the brief delay. I think by large part, John, it's a double-edged sword. I think there's an aspect of naivety and best placed ignorance on our part with how we've put faith and trust too much into these institutions and the people represent them. I think at the same time, for folk, they're born into a system where they don't know any better, and the word there, censorship, it's very fitting. But from very early on in life, we've all faced, these barriers of what's appropriate and what not is, and it can have a deterrent effect. So that kind of a curbs what we said earlier on: expression, free thought, free speech, curbs intellect, and this is by large part what they're wanting. They're wanting stupid people, but just a little bit smart and definitely obedient enough just to go out and punch your ticket into the time machine, press a few buttons, fill a few bottles, empty a few bins, and get home and then spend the money and consume, consume, consume. This is pretty much the blueprint that's been laid out. In that sense of morale can be very deflating and underwhelming. And if you're finding it very tough with bills, cost of living, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I think people are caught in a trap of, and I think the best example to use of recently is everything that we went through from 2019 to 2022. There was so much hocus pocus on who's telling the truth and who's not, because people were coming out and saying one thing, and people coming out and saying something different. Well, that's conspiracy theorist. That person doesn't represent real science, etc., etc. So, yeah, you have to forgive the folks that perhaps get into these states where it's overwhelming. It bears them down. They don't see any way out. I think it's more important though to not lose touch, and we have done by a large degree. We've lost touch within our local communities, that neighbourly aspect of making sure everybody's all right, having conversations, because if you've got good people around about you that you can relate, talk, there's no kind of like a couple of lads, we'll just use this as a general example, a couple of lads going out having a few beers, just sitting talking about life. There will be serious conversation, but there will be piss taking at best, and that's boys' behaviour. It's just how we do things. It's to toughen up, and it's our way of trying to toughen up, and there's a little bit of empathy in there to some extent. These are great community builders because it gives us a support network. If you strip that away from folk and they become isolated, it becomes even harder for these folks to kind of see out of these narratives. And
absolutely.
I believe by some degree that is also something that gets overlooked a lot of the time. So that there's people out there, and it's kind of like they become hopeless to a point where they really don't know where to fit in or what best place serves them. And it's sad, but the positive thing that you can really put onto that is that although that the world is completely messed up and it's really pulling at the strings of a lot of things holding here, this is going to change because it goes in cycles, and we're just in the middle of one of these cycles, and the tables are about to flip. And see, when they flip, all will be revealed because it happens every time there's a breakdown society. And these cowards, these weasels, these self-serving politicians, back in previous time they were called other things, through the forms of the arts, the culture, through the church, through the academia and everything else in between, because it becomes so stagnated and polluted and corrupted. These people usually were the first to the guillotines. But nowadays, the thing is they don't even have that luxury anymore. They do not have that luxury to have such an even dignified exit, which is going to be spectacular viewing. But what we can do and take faith is when that day comes, the unified notion that will happen between the people will be an immediate rehealing of the Western world. And that going forward for future generations, knowing that you have endured that, you've played your part, and you're going to set the tone for a better world, is the most satisfactory, but yet justice and vengeance being served on a plate to our people. It's going to be satisfying, and it's going to be absolutely biblical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And because of the age that I am, I have witnessed, sad to say, I have witnessed the collapse of the social structure of the pubs. I've witnessed that and I've talked about it. It's all rather sad, but it can be, as you say, rebuilt and will be rebuilt. Uh, Other things that are now missing and used to exist, not really in my time, but in my mother's time, there used to be lots of social organizations operated by the cooperative societies. And this is another thing that people have been encouraged to forget. The cooperative society was a huge, huge movement in working class life all over Britain and contributed many, many different things, all of them positive, from cheap loans to philosophical societies where invited guests, renowned guests, would come and speak to ordinary working class people in cooperative halls. And again, there's an educational aspect to all of that. Yeah, I know all of this because my mother was involved in it all as I was growing up. And of course, she passed all this information on to me. That's how I have it. But this stuff, I agree with you, this stuff will come back. It needs to come back, and it will come back in its own good time and its own good way. And it will be led by people. It will be led by politicians. Be led by ordinary folk, as you say. Couple of guys going for a couple of pints, talking about football, women, and politics, as they always do. The difference today will be is they'll be telling the barmaids, turn the music down.
You know, a lot of people, when I've kind of reiterated that, when I've started doing the streams, they'll say things, and when I have to be absolutely crystal clear. I'm just an average Joe. I'm no one special. The only thing that I have within me and the thing that I have behind me ultimately is the word of God. Now, I'm no here to sit and talk about the Creator, because at the end of the day, I could sit and talk to Kingdom Come, and I'll happily do so with every sense of pride from my inner core. But what we do know is from the example of the Bible, an example of history within itself, is that if there's been any invasion, if there has been any shattering conquest, any revolutionary act from within Europe, it has always been done by three factors: those who can articulate and motivate, those who can lead, and those who can endure. That is the three core principles every single time that has fueled the absolute fire in the feet of the people who have got boots on the ground and chased the adversaries right back out to the lands where they came from. And it is going to be the same notion by the same groups of people who are more articulate than myself, who can lead and who can endure the absolute test of time, will be the people to step to the front again. It's not going to be people of privileged. It's not going to be people that, walk about with tartan trousers and brogues with their wee Highland Shetlands. It's not going to be these folk. It is going to be folk that could be your next door neighbour that you had never ever looked at them in that capacity and thought, you know what, I see them that. It is going to be these people that are going to take up and deal with it head on, because
Yeah,
this is a very telling consistency that has happened throughout history.
absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. without a doubt. And it's there. Sometimes, I don't know how you feel, Scots, but sometimes I feel as though I can actually feel it in the air, so to speak. Not all the time, right? But sometimes I can feel it, I can sense it, that there's a there's a longing, there's a longing for something. And that's what the longing is for. It's for that expression of truth and honesty. I don't know how you feel about that, but I get this on and off all the time, you know.
Yeah,
Sometimes stronger.
you can definitely sense it. And the thing is, if you want to talk about it in a European context, when you look at the things that have happened throughout the continent over the last number of years, this is something that's been gently brewing up to the point where we're at the boil. And the thing is like when real change happens, it doesn't happen overnight. Actions happen overnight, but by a large part, there's always a great story and a great context to things before it actually gets to the point where the change comes. And I believe we're very, very much headed in that way, whether it be political, whether it be local politics, whether it be fear mongering news from around the world, mainstream global narratives playing out. There is many people that have been affected with different things that maybe a few years ago gone by, they wouldn't have been disgruntled or annoyed with certain things because the luxuries or the positions that they held, they were unaffected by it. But the bottom line is this: the only people you ever need in life is your own people, and the people can't unify until everyone has had that shared experience, which means that until trouble finds its way on your doorstep or in your street or in your local community, the people can't band together with that one unified cause, which is each other. And we are now getting to a point, whether you live in the Nordic countries or whether you live in the Mediterranean port cities, near enough every country in Europe has had that shared common denominator. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I predict A, B, and C will happen because I'm no for having it. But what I can do is I can take an observation and I can make a frank assertion and say the boil is now coming into the stewing, and when the stewing happens, that's when the meal gets served.
Yeah, I like the analogy. Absolutely, absolutely. And you could see then that this is where morality is so important, and people often, I think, get put off by the use of the word morality. They think it's something beyond them, but obviously, when you and I talk about morality, we're talking about we know what's right and wrong, and that's built into us, and we're guided by it. And most of our people are the same. They're guided by what's in them. And what's in them is an innate sense of this is right and this is wrong. I don't need to know any more than that. It's back to this: I don't need any intellectualizing to understand it. That's wrong, and that's definitely wrong, and that's right, and that's definitely right. And I sense again that that too is slowly on the up. I suppose I'm kind of quoting Dr. Michael E. Jones when I say, Logos is rising all over. Logos is rising. Uh, and
Yeah,
with it comes morality, and with it comes outrage.
well, this is it. It's a natural consequence because if we take that word morality, right, and you put it under a microscope, some folk are going to disagree with how I'm going to word this, right? But I just want you to, instead of acting upon beliefs here, I just want you to think about what I'm saying, right? Morality is, as you said, it's ingrained within you. You can look at a certain situation, you can look at what's happening within your own local community, whether it be homeless people, whether it be children exposed to rats and needles, etc. It can be the most innocent of things, or it can be the most extreme. It's ingrained within you. You know what's right and wrong. But for the last number of years, we've seen morality put under a microscope where it's been taken apart at the very fabric under the name of tolerance, under the name of inclusion, under Darwinism and atheistic theories. Because at the end of the day, right, if we're just happen to be an evolved species that, evolved out the oceans to, these small minuscule byproducts that evolved into human beings, then this is where they kind of argue as the motivation of it's not about prison sentences, it's about the rehabilitation process. And we know that that's hocus pocus bullshit. And pardon my language, John, I do apologise.
No, you carry on.
By large part, I think a lot of people know that that's absolute grade A monkey crap. They just don't have the confidence to speak out about it.
That's what I was saying earlier.
The morality factor is one of the most important things because it's what upholds a people to a certain standard. And if you can take that away and strip that down to a fabric, then this is a consequence. The things that we're seeing playing out, they're just saying, like the digitalization and uplinking your mind to the internet. This is just a natural step in the evolution ladder. But no, it's not. It is all demonic. It is all wrong. Our world is upside down. And there is people there that have been quiet or people that have maybe been coaxed into a certain box and looking and going, do you know what? No, I don't like that. Whether it be, the medical nonsense of 2019 to 2022, whether it be, the rainbows or the drags or whatever, there is subcategories that are waking people up and going, this ain't right. Because they know within themselves there's a thing that's ingrained within you, which is called a soul. Because if we were a collection of chemicals and, water batteries of bacteria that just formed over an X amount of thing, then these people that are trying to tell us what's good and what's not good, they wouldn't be able to have that argument because the reasoning processes wouldn't be intellectually in sync with morality. So that whole debate is hocus pocus, which is why, like you're saying, you can look at a certain situation, just disengage with it. See, as long as it doesn't cross that threshold, it doesn't cross that line, slap it off. Don't let it affect you, because at the end of the day, that's why they're trying to justify that, to get you into that mindset that you are not unique, that your morality is just hocus pocus. It's ingrained. You feel it in your toes when you look at things and you know it's wrong. When you see things playing out on the news and you know it's wrong, that's your morality. You don't need any more proof. No. Sorry for going on the rant, John.
No. That's what we need. We need more people on the rant, because that's where the truth is coming from. The fact that so you want to upload people's consciousness to the internet. Well, you go first. Let me know how you go on and come back and talk to me. No, that won't ever happen. Just like I'll go on television and I'll get this done. Yeah, sure. But what's in that? Well, it's a saline solution. Do you really believe that this is going to be what they want you to have? Are you stupid? Do you think I'm that stupid? Well, people weren't that stupid. And that's the same confidence that they need to apply when it comes to other areas, such as some of the things that we've discussed tonight, such as men dressed as women in front of young children. What would it take? Go back, 20 years ago, and guys like that had to be taken out and clubbed to death?
I don't think people would have had the confidence to do that at all 20 years ago. No, honestly, it was kept indoors within their own quarters because they knew the consequences of what would have happened in a public setting.
Exactly.
Can I just say though, John? You know,
Yep.
again, and this is something that we've kind of if this was a tennis court, we've batted it back and forth tonight. That it's that control, like the arts have been eroded and controlled and morphed into this absolute absurdity and heinous, if you want to call it monster, sadly, to where it is. This is the totality of what you're facing. You're facing the great powers of the world, and it's all about control. The control of the arts, the control of the faith, the control of the spirit, the control of education, the control of social tolerance, the control of influencers in what they're scripted to say and not say, the control of the corporate who are prostitutes that stand as politicians, of what they're representing, what they're not representing. You know,
Yeah.
these things, by a large part, you only give them as much power and as much authority as you allow them to. And that's why
Yes.
over the years, they've come up with these terminologies, especially from the Bolsheviks, the Trotskys and the Lenins, coming up with all these buzzwords to shut down counter arguments of committing heinous acts. If you're being labelled to such a degree, that only holds the power of what you allow it to hold. Because if you're called something and you submit to that, right away, that word's got power.
Yes.
Now, if I turn around and says, now he knows that I absolutely love him dearly, right? But I'm just letting I know Steve's here, right? But if I turn around and say to Steve Cray, Steve, you're an arsehole, and Steve got upset with that, then Steve's giving power to that word. But Steve knows that he's not an arsehole, so he just laughs it off and will go away, you twat, That this is the mindset of that we have to actually tackle face on with these quote unquote words of authority.
Yeah, well, I have spent a long time, you probably realise that, on the channel. I don't call it what you're calling it. I call it, these words have got magical powers. They're magic. They are real magic, these words. Why? Because they do exactly what you have described. They change people's internal structures. And to be able to do that with a word is magic. It's black magic, it's bad magic, but it nevertheless is magical. And until such times as people recognize that these words have power, and that's why they're used. That's why spells are so important. The words, the order of the words, how they're said, how many times they're said, etc., etc., etc. I don't care if people don't believe what I say to be true. I know it's true. But these words have power, and they will, if you allow them into your mind, they will change the way you think. And we only have to look around to see these magical words in action. And they have been in action for a long, long time. But they're generally not recognized for what they are. There's a lot of, from a technical point of view, there is a lot of spell casting that goes on in this world through the use of magical words. And I'm not talking about abracadabra or hocus pocus. I'm just talking about the use of particular phraseology, inclusive, equity, this kind of communistic language that's been perfected a long time ago. These are magical words with power if you know how to use them and invoke them. And we have to recognize that and don't engage with it and don't allow it to affect your thinking.
You know, I think a lot of people who perhaps look at the world and question many things about it, and they can see certain scenarios playing out, and they don't see the greater play behind this. And again, this wasn't me trying to talk about things that I believe in, but then this is where me and you share another belief that there is a lot of spiritual battles being played out. And if you believe in God, then you have to believe in the devil. If you believe in the devil, then you have to believe in God. You don't get one side. It's a two-sided coin there, pardon
Yep.
the pun. And with that, you've got to look into the greater meanings behind these things. That there is occultism, there is biology, there is geometry. All these things are of the teachings. And this isn't Scott Sammer sitting here and saying it is because it is. This is because it's been written down. These people believe in these things. They practice these things. They do these things for these deliberate reasons because it holds weight in whatever ritual that they believe in. It's been recorded down. Many people spoke out for years and years about this stuff. This isn't anything new, and it's nothing new that's happening under the sun today that didn't before.
Correct.
But by a large part, that is exactly what it is. Whether people want to believe in that or not, it's two different things. But I will absolutely guarantee you this, and I will make no bones about this. I don't care if it upset people who follow me, just simply unsubscribe. The bottom line of it is this, folks, for better or worse, and this is me trying to give you a heed warning. When they start showing you things in the sky and they're telling you that's aliens, and see if you believe in that, you're gone. You are gone. I'm not even going to try and butter my words. You're gone. If you believe what they're about to show you in the skies, if you've been paying attention and listening for the last number of years, the whole quote unquote alien world that's about to be unveiled before your eyes, this is just another ploy in the play. There is many people that has come out and spoke about this, many people that have died revealing this information over the years, and quite frankly, many people that have been done away with over the years in some capacity. They've been locked up in imprisonment for life. Now, I can't turn around and tell you you've got to believe what I believe, but what I would absolutely beg of you to do is to look at things and try and be as neutral as you can possibly be and look into each and every single issue that they are playing out before your eyes, whether it be aliens, whether it be climate, whether it be net migration, whether it be net zero. Look at these things. They're all interlinked by the same people, with the same institutions, plus the same agenda, because there is a system. There is a system at play that has been kept for a card that's going to be put down at the last second based on three three cards to be played before the chips get put on the table. And when the chips get put on the table, if you haven't been convinced by body, soul, and mind, there is no other way to say it, folks. You're gone.
He's right, you know. He's right. It's as simple as that. How long have I been saying it? We're engaged in a spiritual war. It's being conducted in this plane, but it is a spiritual war. Uh, Sometimes it's expressed through the physical. More often than not, it's physical and the spiritual that is being expressed through. But nevertheless, it is a spiritual war. And that's why I've always said to you uh, that, as far as I'm concerned, I'm on the side of God, the supreme divine creator. And if you're wise, that's the side you should be on, because that's the side that's going to win. That side is always going to win. It's just the way it is. He will never be defeated. It's a, it's a delusion that they somehow are able to sell people that somehow uh, his opposite number can rule. Well, no, I'm afraid not. Uh, John Milton wrote a beautiful poem filled with wonderful poetry, Paradise Lost. And one of the lines in it is, it's a huge book, by the way, if you don't know it, is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. That's one of the lines from it. If you go along with that idea, God help you, you're doomed. You're absolutely doomed. Because that's the notion they're selling people. It's better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Well, I'd rather serve in heaven myself than reign in hell. Uh, but that's just me. But it is real.
Here, 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 John. I think by large part, the church has got a lot to blame for this. They really do. Again, this is something that you and myself have spoke about by a large part for the whole time that we've known one another. But and this is something that you could probably do later on. You know, it's another conversation for another day. But if folk want to understand the significance of the Bible, see, in heaven there is no Catholics, there is no Protestants, there is no bishops or Latter Day Saints or Orthodox. It's Christians, but Christianity isn't Judaism. There is no such thing as Judo-Christianity.
Oh, God, no. That's nonsense.
That's something that was coined to submit a group of people to serve in another group of people, and that's a whole other I wouldn't say
Conversation.
shock. Yes, yes, but the point being, study to prove thyself worthy. It is written, and if you want to know about that, folks, you go and you do some digging onto the Bible, the book of Genesis, as a history book. See, it's not a creation book; that's a history book. The church know that, but they don't want to tell you that. The minute you come to the consensus of what that actually entails, your whole worldview would change, and a lot of these narratives and agendas that are playing out, have been done since the 1940s, would make absolutely crystal clear sense to the point that you stand rooted like a tree and just let it all pass by you because you know where you're going and you know who's who and who's who. And that, my friends, is all I'm going to say on it. Study to prove thyself worthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's probably a good place for us to bring the stream to a close, Scots. Uh, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I always do when I'm speaking to you. And obviously, you will be back. Uh, I'm hoping, as you've probably realised, I'm trying to get a stream organised to talk about the demonic entities that are at work and show some light on that. And that would be nice if you could be taking part on that live stream. But that's something for the future. We need to have somebody who knows a wee bit about that, I feel. And I don't feel that's me. Uh, so that would be nice.
Yeah, you just let me know when you have the format put down and you know what's happening with it. You just let me know, John, and I'll be more than happy to come on and play whatever part that you want with that stream.
Excellent. Excellent, my friend. So, do you want to tell people where they can find you if they don't already know?
Well, for the folks that don't know, I'm on YouTube. You just type in Scott's Armour. You see my channel. You'll find me doing Sunday streams with Resisting the Lies, DJ with his boys on laptop, and you can find me with Clive Chance as well. With his mini football team on a Sunday, we talk all things Scottish politics and thereof. If you like the streams, give it a wee like, subscribe. If you want to find more rants at absolutely anything and everything, you can always follow me on Twitter. But if you don't fancy it, then please like John's stream, give him a subscription, and leave a comment after it so that the algorithm picks it up. And I will say this: good night, God bless to you and yours, and I wish you well until next time.
Excellent. So I'm going to bring on the outro music, folks. And as I already said at the beginning of this, it's unlikely that I'm going to be well enough to do a Thursday night. I have no plans to do a Thursday night. Okay? I'm hoping that I've got the energy to do a Friday night. And that would be my aim, to be able to do a Tuesday and a Friday and see how that goes. But it's all to do with health and all that stuff, as you know. So I want to thank Scott's Armour, as always, for being a great guest, a great contributor, as always. And I want to thank all of you for being here and for your prayers and good wishes and kind thoughts. It means a lot. And hopefully I'll see you on Thursday. Not Thursday. See, there you are. There's habit. Friday. But for the moment, I will say what I usually say. Adios, au revoir, cheerio, and until Friday, goodbye for now. Enjoy the music.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides a fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees.
All together now.
Love's much more,
So much more
than we can know.
than we could ever possibly know.
We are one small glow,
But a very important glow
in the eternal flow. Melodies of long ago, songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, past the consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony. But we're much more
So much more.
than we can know. We are one small glow
But a very important blow.
in the eternal flow. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow.
So you take care, folks, and I'll speak to you all real soon. So it's bye for now. Take care.